Hello friends! Welcome to my channel, or welcome back. My name is Elise, and this is my mystical bookshelf. And today I have another video in my series of Sarah Dessen Rereadathon book reviews. So for my second video in this series, I decided to do Saint Anything. And this is one of the books that I unfortunately don't own a physical copy of that I had read in high school. I think I must have gotten it from the library because I don't own it in my collection of Sarah Dessen books. So I decided to listen to the audiobook, and that was a great decision because this book really comes to life in the audio version. I really liked reading it as a physical copy, but listening to it was just as nice, if not better. And it was narrated by Taylor Meskimen, and she had the perfect voice for Sydney. She was very quiet and soft-spoken, and I really think that attributed to Sydney's characteristics throughout the book. Because Sydney, that's the main character in this Sarah Dessen novel, and she is very quiet, she's not very outgoing. She kind of lives in the shadow of her brother Peyton, and the main conflict in this story is also one of the heavier themes, in my opinion. I've noticed I really like the heavier Sarah Dessen books, and this one is no exception. So this book deals with drunk driving, and it also deals with jail and like the consequences of drunk driving and going to jail. And Peyton, her brother, is in jail in the book, and he's in jail for drunk driving. He's in jail for hitting someone with his car while he was impaired while he was impaired, and he unfortunately paralyzes this kid that he hits. I'm glad that he didn't kill him, but he paralyzes this boy, and he has to live with the consequences of that. So he is in jail, and it starts off with him in jail, and yeah, it's just crazy. It starts off just like Dreamland, hit the ground running, that type of book. And we learn a lot about Sydney and her personality and her dilemma throughout the book. And yeah, so it starts off with the trial for Peyton, and it starts off whether he's going to be convicted of drunk driving, and I think he's convicted of manslaughter even though he didn't kill David Ibarra. That's the boy that he hit, and Sydney is wrecked by the consequences of this because she feels really bad. She's not even the one who did it, and she feels way more empathetic than even I think Peyton does, which I find interesting. I think Peyton is remorseful, but he doesn't nearly show as much emotion as Sydney does towards this. She's even more empathetic than her mom and dad, which I find crazy. I don't know, if my kid I think he does run him over. If my kid ran over someone and paralyzed them for life, I would be, pissed. I would be so upset. But her mom, Sydney's parents, Julie and Peyton. So Peyton is named after his dad, so this is Peyton second, Peyton first. But Julie and Peyton are kind of they hold Peyton the second on a pedestal. That's kind of what I got from the book. He kind of has this privilege in his parents' eyes, which is unfortunate because they don't even do a statement to David Ibarra. His mom doesn't even make a statement in the paper to apologize to him, which I thought was ludicrous. Like I said, if my kid, paralyzed someone, I would obviously apologize to the family for my kid being so stupid and driving drunk, but nonetheless, obviously it makes me very upset. I don't like drunk driving. I don't like drunk people. I don't like drinking. I just think it's stupid. I don't get the point of it. But that's not the point of this video. But anyway, so yeah, the book starts off with Peyton's trial, and he's convicted of drunk driving and manslaughter, and he has to do time in prison. I'm not sure how long he does his time in prison, because by the end of the book he's still in prison, so I'm not sure how long his sentence is. I don't think it really specifies, and I'm okay with that. So yeah, so we don't know how long he's in jail for, but it starts off with him being sentenced to jail, and Sydney and her mom and her dad are in the courthouse, and her mom is like hysterical, and Sydney's like introspective about everything, and their best friend, or not their best friend, but Peyton's best friend, Ames, which I will get to, because I have said his name very venomously. He is not a good person in this book. He is, to say it nicely, he is a creep. He doesn't necessarily do anything throughout the book, except towards the very end, but I will get to that. But I want to preface by saying that Sydney doesn't say anything about Ames because he, quote unquote, doesn't do anything, but he is definitely a creeper. And I would like to say that just because someone doesn't do something to you, if they make you feel uncomfortable, you should tell someone about it. Because it doesn't matter if they don't do anything. They can still be, like, you should tell someone that they make you uncomfortable. That's all I'm going to say about that. Because Sydney, it's sad because she doesn't say anything to her mom and dad about Ames making her feel creeped. He makes her feel uncomfortable. And I felt uncomfortable listening to it. Like, he touches her like shoulder longer than necessary. I think that counts as doing something, in my opinion. Like, if you are lingering with how you're interacting and touching someone, that's being creepy. I don't think you should do that to someone. And if they are clearly uncomfortable when you're doing it, don't continue to do it, because that's what Ames does throughout the whole book. He's constantly trying to touch Sydney, trying to be in the same room as her. He looks at her for longer than is necessary. Like, he stares at her, like, hardcore. And listening to it, I'm just like, dude, you need to back the F up. Like, seriously. And I don't know how old he is. I think he's 22 or 21. But he's being a creeper. And Sydney is 17. And he acts like he wants to date Sydney throughout the whole book. And she's clearly not interested. Like, dude, take a hint. He doesn't take the hint throughout the whole book. And he is one of the characters that, in the Sarah world, really upsets me. Because he doesn't classically do anything to, like, sexually assault Sydney until the very end of the book. But throughout the whole book, he makes me uncomfortable. He's creepy. He's just a creepy person. And that is one of the themes in this book, is that if you see something, say something. Or if you feel something, you should tell someone about it. Because I was upset with Sydney for not saying anything to her mom and dad. Because it doesn't matter if he didn't, like, touch her inappropriately, like, the very first time they met. If he's making her actively uncomfortable, I feel like you should voice your opinion about that. So yeah, her mom and dad don't know anything about Ames being a freaking creep. And so Sydney is dealing with that on top of dealing with her mom and dad, like, treating her differently than Peyton. Like, Sydney doesn't do anything in this book that would... She doesn't do anything that would warrant the level of reprimand that she gets. Like, Peyton literally paralyzed someone. And he's, like, on this pedestal. Like, his mom basically idolizes Peyton. And it's kind of disgusting. Like, I didn't like her mom in this book. And even towards the end, nothing she did redeemed her in my eyes. I don't like Julie. I don't think she's a good mom. I don't think she's a good role model. And I kind of think that's the point, because there are a lot of people out there that are like that, and that's really disgusting. And yeah, so there's also one point in the book where Julie, like, blames David Ibarra for riding his bike and being hit by Peyton. So I'm like, what are you even talking about? Like, he's riding his bike like a normal person. Your son was drunk driving. That's not being normal. So I'm just like, I don't understand what her point was with even saying that. And Sydney felt the same. Hello, friends. So once again, I was looking at my video and I was editing it, and I noticed that it cut me off again, and I'm not really sure what happened with that. So I left off because I had to rewatch it because I didn't remember exactly what I had said already. So I just finished watching it, and the part that I left off on was me ranting about Julie and Peyton, and Julie putting Peyton the second on this pedestal, and how she had blamed the victim. And the one thing that I hate is victim blaming. Like, that's something that really irritates me. And it's just like, what's the point? Like, your son hit someone and paralyzed them. I think even if he isn't going to take accountability, I think you as the parent should take accountability for that. So my thing with Julie is she doesn't take accountability for her son's actions. And I understand that Peyton's an adult, and I think he is remorseful and does take responsibility for his actions, because he does get irritated with his own mother, which I was like, good for Peyton. Stand up to Julie, because she's a menace in this book, honestly. Like, anytime Julie speaks, I'm just like, can you just shut up? Because what you say has no meaning to me, and I don't like you. So just stop talking. Literally, just stop talking. But yeah, so that's my Julie rant. And I will say that a lot of the moms in the Sarah Destin books kind of irritate me to a certain extent. I don't know if Sarah is like pulling from her own experiences, because I don't know Sarah, but I've noticed a theme in her books. Like, a lot of the moms, some of them are normal, but some of them are not normal, and a lot of them are like very controlling and very like not understanding of their daughters. And they just don't get it. They don't empathize with their daughters at all. And I feel like Julie is in this category. Like, she doesn't empathize with Sydney whatsoever. She kind of blames Sydney for a lot of stuff, which I totally didn't understand either, because it's like, your daughter is she's such a good person. Like, Sydney doesn't do anything to warrant the level of scrutiny that she gets from her mom. Like, I don't understand if Julie is just like being overly protective because she doesn't want Sydney to end up like Peyton. But nothing that Sydney does, she just doesn't give me the vibe that she's going to even be like Peyton, because she doesn't go out partying, she doesn't go out drinking, she has really nice friends. And a lot of the other girls in the Sarah Destin books, they get away with a lot more than Sydney. Like Remy. Remy is completely the opposite of Sydney. She's like a 180. Like, Remy drinks and parties, and her mom doesn't even bat an eyelash. Her mom is one of the laissez-faire parents in this world. Whereas Sydney is like very straight-laced. She's a very good girl, and she gets the highest level of scrutiny. And it's just something that I find really ironic. But yeah, so I mean, we go through Sydney's story, like, we see her blossom, which is something that I really enjoyed listening to and reading the first time. Like, I really saw Sydney, like, come into herself and figure out who she is as a person. That's the one thing I love about Sarah Destin books, is Sarah really highlights a girl's coming of age story, I guess is what I'm trying to say. Because Sydney meets the what is the family name? The Chathams. She meets the Chathams. And they're the people who are really there for Sydney. And that is something that I personally love that for Sydney. I love that she found her own family, and she found people that actually see her for who she is. Like, they treat Sydney normally. They treat Sydney like a normal 17-year-old should be treated. And they really help Sydney come out of her shell and become like a social butterfly. It's really beautiful to see Sydney's character develop throughout the book, because she meets Layla. And it's funny because she meets Layla at the courthouse in the very beginning of the book, but we don't know that, and Sydney doesn't know that. It's sort of like dramatic irony, but it's like, because we see that, we know in the end that it is Layla, but when we first meet this girl, it's just like this random blonde girl who runs into Sydney, and I forget why Layla was even there. I don't remember why Layla was there, but we see her run into Sydney, and I thought, maybe she's going to be a pivotal character later on, and it turns out she was. And I really like that literary device too, like using something from the very beginning and then bringing it back full circle. I really like that. I thought that was a good plot line and a plot device. So yeah, Layla and Sydney become besties, and then Sydney and Mac, they have like this friends to lovers type of scenario, and it's super cute. I really like their romance. It's not like most of Sarah's books, it's kind of like it starts off, the romance is like right in your face, and you know that it's going to be this character and this character, and they're going to be together, and you know right away that, and their relationship starts off right away. But with Sydney and Mac, it's like, it's very slow burn, and they start off as, they don't really talk to each other that much in the beginning, then they kind of form a tentative friendship, and then they really get to know each other when, because the Chathams own the pizza shop, and I thought that was kind of cool. And I'm not gonna lie, it made me crave pizza when I was listening to this book, because I was like, oh my gosh, pizza sounds so good right now. But yeah, so they own the pizza shop, and the pizza shop is, it's really cute. It's like a seaside pizza place of sorts. I think it's beach themed. It's really cute. I liked listening to that part. So Mac and Sydney get to know each other in that realm, because they go on deliveries with each other, and it's just really cute to see their story develop like that. And it's like a really, I like the slow burn romances better personally. I like the ones where it's like you don't know if they're gonna end up together right away, but then it like develops more and you're like, oh yeah, I could see them being together. Like, I like that. It was really cute, very nicely done, and it seemed completely realistic. Like, I think Mac is probably the same age as Sydney. He might be like 1 year older than them. So he's probably 18 and she's 17. And it just was really cute. I really enjoyed that part of the book. But yeah, I think Sydney's like full character arc is because of the Chathams. Because that's when her mom kind of redeems herself a little bit towards the end, because Mrs. Chatham, Mac and Layla's mom, she has MS, and it's really bad, and it's progressing worse throughout the book, and she goes into the hospital for one part. And I think that's where Julie really sees Sydney in like how everyone else sees Sydney. Because I feel like everyone else sees Sydney as this really caring, empathetic girl who's quiet but is also outgoing with her friends. And I think Julie finally sees Sydney as that person when Julie goes to track Sydney down at the hospital, when she goes to see Mrs. Chatham, because Mrs. Chatham had like an episode where she passed out or something, and she had to get rushed to the hospital right away. And this happens at night, so Sydney kind of just drops everything and goes to help her friends, which I think is what really puts things into perspective for Julie, because it really showcases Sydney's character. It showcases that no matter what, Sydney is there for her friends. And I think that really shows Sydney's maturity. And I think it softens Julie towards Sydney, which is something that I loved. I still really didn't like Julie at all throughout the book, but at least that part, it was like Julie finally somewhat understood Sydney and why she does what she does and why she did what she did, because Sydney gets in trouble for taking a sip of like vodka or something, and it is really overblown. That was such an overblown conflict in the book, in my opinion, because Sydney she didn't even really like have an inkling towards drinking except for that one moment, and the only reason she gets in trouble is because Ames is there, and Ames like tattletales on her, which I thought was really immature of someone his age to do. Like, he's probably 22. I'm like, what do you have to get? What are you getting from like antagonizing a high school girl? Like, I don't get it. I don't understand the power struggle with that. Like, I think that part really upset me too. It's like Ames is always trying to get Sydney in trouble, so she has to owe him a favor. That's one thing that made me really feel icky about Ames, especially, is that he constantly wanted to have something over Sydney's head so that he has the upper hand. There was like a really big power struggle between them. And that's towards the end, especially, that's where the sexual assault comes in, because he like tries to force Sydney to stay. He like backs her up against the wall, and it's like, I don't know what he's gonna do. He acts like he wants to kiss her, he acts like he wants to rape her. I don't know what he was planning on doing, but I'm glad that it didn't escalate further than what it did, because it made me really uncomfortable listening to it. So, but yeah, that part really cemented Ames being like a horrible person, in my opinion. And that's when Ames's true colors finally are showcased to Sydney's parents. Like, because Sydney's dad sees Ames like doing something, but he doesn't know what he's doing. And he gets closer to the situation, and he's like, what are you doing to my daughter? What were you gonna do to her? He like gets in his face, and he hits him. I think he hits him a couple times, and he like pushes him out of the way, and I think he drags him down the hallway away from Sydney. And finally we see Sydney's parents stick up for her for once. It just was very, like, I'm so happy that it finally was justified. Like, Ames finally got justice. Like, we finally see Sydney's parents see Ames for who he truly is. And that was one of the very pivotal moments in the book to me. That's when that was like peak climax, and then it just goes down from there, and everything is smooth, and everything ends on a good note. And we finally, I think Ames, I don't know if Sydney presses charges against Ames for sexual assault. I don't think she does, but he like gets a lawyer just in case and stuff, but he never bothers them ever again, which is something that bravo. Get them out, get out of here. It's like that one meme, like, stay away from her, get a job, that type of thing. Like that, I'm glad that he left and whatnot, because that was really upsetting to me. And then Ames, I'm just glad that Ames's character finally is shed light in the end, because that's something that really bothered me. And I'm glad that Julie and Peyton finally see Ames for the creep that he is, and that they finally understand Sydney's dilemma, and that the book ends on a really high note. It ends with Sydney's life kind of going back to normal despite Peyton still being in jail, and she and Peyton's relationship gets better throughout the book too, which is something that I really enjoyed watching and listening to as well, because at first Sydney doesn't want to talk to Peyton, which is understandable. She's actually really resentful towards him, and she's really upset with him for drunk driving. And she's really upset with him for hitting this guy, or hitting this boy with his car and stuff. And she says at one point she hates the way Peyton has like made this giant hole in their family. But it's really nice to see in the end that her and Peyton, they talk to each other more in the end, which is really good. They build their relationship back up. And Julie finally learns boundaries with Sydney, which is nice, and she doesn't always treat her like a prisoner, which pun is completely intended, because she doesn't even treat her own son like a prisoner. And Peyton gets mad at his mom too, and that puts things into perspective for Julie as well. And that was something that also made me kind of happy. It's like, yes, stand up to your mom. I'm really glad that you did that, because Peyton tells Julie that this is not school. This is not a school event. He said he's not proud of like passing this class in jail, because that's what prompts him to get so upset at Julie, because Julie wants to make this big deal about a class that he passed in prison, and she wants to have like this giant party for him, I guess. And he yells at her and tells her like, I'm not proud of this. I don't want to be in jail. I don't want any part of this. I don't know why you're making a big deal about it. I don't know why you seem proud of me. So it really puts into perspective that too. And yeah, I don't know. I'd really recommend this book if you like family dynamics, and I would also recommend it if you like brother-sister dynamics too, because we have Mac and Layla, and then we have Peyton and Sydney, and I really liked seeing both of their relationships evolve together, because Peyton and Sydney's relationship gets better, and Layla and Max's relationship was always good throughout the book. So it's interesting to see two types of sibling dynamics together like that. And yeah, this book was a 5-star for me. I really enjoyed it. I don't want to give my ranking away right away, but it's definitely going to be on the top for me. Like, there's very few Sarah Dessen books that are mediocre to me. But yeah, this was definitely a 5-star, and I would totally recommend reading it, and I recommend all of Sarah's books, honestly. She's a great writer. I love her so much. I can't wait to see what she comes up with next, because I know she said she's working on something. I think in her Friday 5 blog this past Friday, she said, I don't know if she was almost done with her book, but I'm so excited. I am so ready for a new Sarah Dessen book. It's been such a long time since I read a new Sarah Dessen book that I'm like super excited about it. But yeah, those are my thoughts on that, and I hope you enjoy the video. I enjoyed making it, and I appreciate all of my subscribers and appreciate your support, and thank you for letting me talk to you about Sarah Dessen books. And thank you for letting me talk to you about any book at all, because it's really fun. I really like this channel, and I'm excited to see what happens next. And with that, I will see you in the next video. So goodbye, friends!